All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Monday, November 27th of 2023. Looking ahead, we have a Monday night football game tonight. We have a 5-game NBA slate and a 6-game NHL slate. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. If you guys have questions, you get them in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second way, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You get access to our similar channels as well, our individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Everyone is in there helping users get better at DFS each and every day, answering questions where they can here. But with that said, it is Monday here. I know we haven't had the show since Wednesday, so appreciate you guys all tuning in today. We have plenty to go over, but because it is Monday, that means that we have to announce the winners for our weekly Max Challenge. The Max Challenge is a giveaway that we've been running all NFL season here. We have one for DraftKings. We have a version for OwnersBox. If you guys aren't signed up, there's still time to get signed up and get in on the prizes. Use the links in the description of this video and use the screen, enter the challenge button, and then you can sign up and get access to weekly prizes. And all you got to do is follow the eligibility requirements down here on the bottom. But for the winners this week, jumping over to our Google Doc here, I posted the link to this when I sent the going live notification. And then this is also pinned in the office hours channel, so anyone can come in here and check this out. But our winner this week, highest score for DraftKings, was Scholleman with a 27th place finish and 212.96 points here. So Scholleman is going to win a SaberSim hoodie and an entry into our end of the season free roll here. So congratulations to you on that one here. And then over on OwnersBox, our winner, can't even pronounce it, QZTJLX Vile, 9th place, 198.84 points, going to take home a free month of SaberSim and a SaberSim hoodie. So congratulations to the two of you for winning our top finishers of the week here. And then lastly here for DraftKings, we're going to do our random entrant, one free entry into next week's mini max. I've grabbed all of the names here from our week 12 maxers, put them into our trusty wheel of names. So I'm going to shuffle this a couple of times here, and then we are going to see who gets the free entry into next week's mini max contest. And it looks like the winner is Toasted Taters. Congratulations. And our support team will reach out to all of the winners for this week. So we appreciate you guys playing each and every week as you guys normally do here. And we've had, the strongest numbers year to date, and we can hope to continue to have a very solid finish to the season here. But with that said, we're going to jump into our regularly scheduled office hours here. So I'm going to get SaberSim pulled up. We're going to start with a question that came in via support. So we're going to hit the question in support. We're going to jump over to the Discord and then jump over to the YouTube chat last here. So bear with me, guys. Plenty to go over today since a long weekend here. So first question from support. Question said, where is SaberSim's weakness? Let's say I did an R2 of correlation matrix of projections and ownership and compared Saber to ETR/stochastic/RG/ the bat, etc. And let's say ETR came out ahead for both projection and ownership accuracy. Would it be beneficial to use ETR, projection/ownership, and SaberSim game-by-game sims and contest sims? Are there other areas I could input third-party data to get the most accurate outcomes? Okay, good question here. So really, there's only a couple things that you can alter here. So you can really only alter projection, ownership, minimax exposures. These are all of the editable fields here. Like all of these other stats that you see in the app, I'm looking at basketball right now, minutes, points, rebounds, assists, etc. These are all summaries from what happens in our play-by-play simulations. So when you see that, Jordan Poole plays 32 minutes here, that's not something that you can go in and alter. This is saying, hey, in our sims, this is how many minutes. he played on average across the 5,000 game sims for this game, right? So you can really only adjust projection and ownership. When you do that, however, when you adjust projection, right, what's going to happen is that you are changing his mean projection, but you are not affecting his range of outcomes. So what we do is that, let's say you take him from 37 points to 40, you're going to increase him by 3. Well, what you can do is, well, what's going to happen is you're going to shift the mean. So then when you're doing that, you are increasing his floor and raising his ceiling. So every time he scores 20, he now scores 23. Every time he scores 50, he now scores 53. So what you get is you get the SaberSim range of outcomes from the play-by-play sims, and then you get your adjusted mean projection on top of that. So you're able to use both of those things together here. So that's one thing here with projection. And then as far as ownership is concerned, it depends whether or not you're using contest sims. So if you are not using contest sims, then what SaberSim is doing by default is it's using SaberScore as your lineup grading metric. And then within SaberScore, one of the variables is a negative weight on average adjusted ownership here. So the negative weight on average adjusted ownership comes directly from the ownership projection. So if you're using SaberScore, then adjusting ownership projections will work just fine. If you are not using just SaberScore and you are instead using contest sims, then what you're going to need to do is rebuild the field lineups. You're going to need to create a custom set of field lineups. So I actually cover this on our YouTube channel. If you go to playlists, and then if you go to understanding contest sims, you're going to go to using custom ownership with contest sims. This video here is going to show you how to take custom ownership projections, create a new set of field lineups, and then use that set of field lineups to run your contest sim against. So remember, I was actually having a conversation with somebody in support about this earlier today, is that the ownership projections are exposures. They are pool exposures from an ownership build. So we run a build, we take the pool exposures, those become the ownership projections. That is where the field lineups come from, is that ownership build that was run. So what you are doing with custom ownership is creating a new set of field lineups. But I would definitely check out that video on the YouTube channel to learn more about how to do that. All right, good question there. And we will get a timestamp recording of that question back over to you since it came from support. Timestamp, support. Okay, and then jumping over to the Discord. So it looks like our first question here came in from Bill's Nut on 11/23 here. So that would be last Friday. So this question says, can you please explain what SaberSim does when you late swap? In NFL yesterday, I was underweight on Charbonnet and overweight on McCaffrey in my first build. When late swapping, somehow I ended up way overweight on Charbonnet and way underweight on McCaffrey. How does that even make sense? What is the sim doing? And I'm starting to think late swap makes lineups worse. I have seen this happen in NBA too. So there was actually a lot of discussion around this question. I caught up with it prior to starting the show. And one thing that I noticed is that between the back and forth, you said that you had a lot of Lions D. The Lions D was like your number one exposure for defense. And they ended up scoring 0 points. And I believe the Packers had like 19 points on defense. So really what happens when you late swap is SaberSim is going to look at up to 50,000 lineups in your contest. So in the pre-slate contest sim, there's 10,000 field lineups. When the slate locks, we're able to look at more field lineups from the actual contest. We're able to look at about 50,000 right now at the moment. We are going to look at the 50,000 lineups that we have available, and then we are going to see how your lineups are doing compared to the other lineups in the contest. Well, when you have a lot of a team or player that does very, very poorly, that's going to hurt your overall win percentage. So what SaberSim does is, instead of staying on some of those chalky pieces like Christian McCaffrey at, I think he came in at like 60% ownership or something like that. Generally, it's going to swap to players who are lower owned in an effort to make up for that bad effort or bad play up to that point, right? So those negative fantasy points coupled with the Packers doing so well hurts a lot of your lineup so much that SaberSim determines that in order to gain back ROI, we need to go and swap to lower owned pieces in other areas of our lineup. So playing a 58% owned Christian McCaffrey isn't the best thing that you can do. What you would rather happen is for that Christian McCaffrey play to fail and somebody lower owned like Zach Charbonnet, who's operating in an increased role with Kenneth Walker out, to get there and gain some leverage back that way. So what SaberSim is doing is trying to optimize for highest ROI, but that's why we always suggest risk-adjusted ROI to account for some of that variance and some of those high leverage plays. So I'm not sure what sorting metric you're using. ROI and risk-adjusted ROI are going to be correlated, but I do think that, you might be overweighting caching in this scenario. So like, I always like to remind people that only about 20% of lineups in a contest cash. That is 1 in 5. From that bottom percentile, the 20th percentile, the 19th, some of that, somewhere in that range, you're only making about 2 times your money. So what's happening is that an outcome that happens mathematically 1 in 5 times, you are getting paid 2 to 1 on that offer. So that is terrible math. You do not want to play a game like that. That's why winning in GPPs is so important, because you need those, 100x outcomes to happen every once in a while to continue to maintain your bankroll and continue to stay alive in your contest, right, over a season here. So that's why SaberSim is built and optimized to win GPPs, not to cash, not to, have these min cash outcomes, not for highest, 20th percentile. We are looking at the very top ranges. If you wanted to, cash rate is a sorting metric. You could try and create some type of custom metric that balances out cash rate versus win rate versus ROI and use some type of balance there, some type of balance that passes the eye test for you. But just keep those things in mind when you're late swapping as to, why am I seeing this, right? I bet you if you had a bunch of Packers defense lineups, you probably would have gone with the builder probably would have put you on a lot of Christian McCaffrey. It's like, hey, we have this 5% owned play that did super well. Not a lot of the field has them. We can now insert chalk pieces into this lineup and we will be okay with that outcome. But it just really depends on how your lineups are doing up to that point. All right. Good question there. Next question here from Guy Will Gamble. Question says, when using custom projections and late swapping, what's the best way to use the live sim projections for the games that have already started, but continue to use my projection for the rest of the slate? Currently, I'm downloading the SaberSim live projections and uploading it back as the custom projection for the games have started, but I'm wondering if there's a more efficient way to accomplish this. Thanks. Okay, good question here. So this actually happens automatically for you. And what I would suggest is, so the reason it happens is when you create a contest sim, these 2 toggles are toggled on automatically. Use live sims if available, use live field lineups if available. So what this means is that, let's say that you come in here, you save your custom projections. Once the slate starts, we are automatically going to be switching from your custom projections to the SaberSim live projections. So in this 5-game slate tonight, there are 3 games that start at lock. You're going to use your custom projections when building your lineup. But once the game locks, we are going to turn off your custom projection and turn on the SaberSim live projection. And then that way, when you go to late swap at, the 6 p.m. Pacific time window here, you're going to have the information from how the players did up to that point in the game when you go to run your late swap. So that is why we are automatically doing it for you. You just need to upload your custom projection. And then if your custom projection is there and the game starts, we will switch automatically for you. But definitely a good clarification. Okay. Next question here. It looks like from Adam Perry. So a lot of conversation here. So just going to try and weave through it and find the questions. So Adam Perry said, hey, Andrew, curious how or if you're handling sims on OwnersBox due to the overlay. Flagship won't come close to filling with 7,777 entrants. Are you simming against a different contest to get a closer number of entries. Problem is it won't account for the higher min cash rate, but I would probably still represent 0.1 to 1% win rates. I guess this applies to any large overlay situation. Thank you. Yeah, this is interesting. You know, I saw this question, not something we've really talked about here. What you could do is you could redo the math. So when you set up a contest sim, there are a couple of inputs here. There's contest size, percent to first, percent entries paid. These are the only three inputs that you can alter. And you can do this by setting it to custom. When you click custom, you can go in here and then you can set these, right? I'm personally not doing this for any overlaid slate because people can continue to enter up to, you know, seconds before lock here. So like you could end up with inaccurate info. What I would say is that, you know, if you contest sim as if the contest is going to fill, you're only going to benefit more if it doesn't. Not to say that you're going to lose anything if the contest doesn't fill. Yes, the number of entries will be smaller here, but and the cash rate will go up, but I don't think you gain so much by doing that. And I think that, you know, the contest size is going to be changing, you know, seconds leading up until lock, that it's going to be so hard to figure that out. Like you might need, you know, 2 minutes to go through this entire contest sim, filling your lineup, entering into the site process. Well, if it's 150 max, you know, you might get people, you know, 5 people who throw in 150 lineups in the last 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden that jumped 750 entrants, and then now you contest sim with a smaller size. So honestly, I would just stick to keeping it at the normal contest size, but I definitely like what you're thinking about and trying to find an edge any way you can. I definitely think that was a good question overall here. Okay, couple questions here from Sammy. First question says, oops, posted it in office hours, not the YouTube chat. Let's try that again. Okay, question says, hi, Andrew. Just finally got to watch my question about negative 100% ROI, risk-adjusted ROI, and it did it again for my only afternoon turbo. And these are all pre-contest, not live sims. So if I've heard you mention a metric filter so you don't get to see those, how can I do such a metric? Thanks. Okay, let's start there because it looks like there's a couple different questions here. And then also, you know, it sounds like you might be running into an issue here. So if anybody ever is, go to the top right corner, go to report a problem, write us a brief description of what you're seeing, and then just submit this ticket and it will go directly to our support team where we can help you out, where we can troubleshoot with you and then figure out what's going on. So that is always super helpful for our support team to figure out what issues are going on. But let's say that, you know, you run your lineups and then, you know, you run your contest sim and then you want to create a filter where you don't see lineups of a certain, I don't know, threshold, right? So something that I personally like to do is run my contest sim, set a filter to not even consider lineups that have a less than 0% ROI. So I'm okay with neutral ROI. I want positive ROI, obviously, but I don't want to see any lineups that have, you know, -1, -15, -25, etc. here, right? So what I will do is run the contest sim, go to my filter, which is right next to my lineup sorting method, go to add filter, and then I'm going to say show lineups. I'm going to go into the contest sim, click that drop down, show lineups with ROI from the contest sim greater than 0. What it's going to do is identify which lineups were negative ROI and then move those into the trash. So it looks like it moved about 500 lineups into the trash here. And then now I'm operating with a pool of lineups that are all positive ROI here, which is good, which is exactly what I want. So that's how you do that filter. And then second question is another question. Based on contest sims, let's say I reserve multiple different types of contests, single entry, 3 max, 20 max, and at least 2 each. Which contest sims should I be adding to use? I know these have been asked before, but what is actual criteria to use late swaps? Is it only when a player is actually out, for example? Thanks. Let's say I run a build when I look at exposure versus pool, and the discrepancy between from one extreme end of the other extreme end, 75% exposure versus 9% pool. Last not least, with the newer updates for diversification, are we still bumping min uniques until some lineup goes into the trash? Good day. Okay, so a lot of questions here. We're just going to go through them one at a time. So one of them is saying, hey, I'm playing a lot of single entries, 3 max, 20 max, 150s. I'm playing multiple. How do I set up my contest sims? So it's a good question. So remember that within each build, you can set up to 5 to 10 contest sims at once. So if you want to do that, you can. You can do 5 contest sims here for my single entries and 3 maxes, and then 5 contest sims for my 20 max and 150 maxes, depending on how many contests you're playing. And you can set it up for all of them. So that's one way to do it. The way that I prefer to do it, especially when late swapping, is I will pick a single contest for each set. So I'm doing 2 builds, single entry and 3 max, 20 max, and 150 max. And then I am doing 1 build for each, 1 contest sim for each build. And I'm picking a contest that I'm calling like my preferred contest, where I am using that contest to contest sim all of my lineups together. So say I have 4 20 maxes. I have a dime time, a quarter, $1.20, and then the $4.20. I will probably just pick the $4.20 max, use that as my contest sim, and then use how the lineups grade out from that contest for all 4 of those lineups. So late swapping 80 lineups based on a single contest sim is how I prefer to do it. Really, that's due to time savings and because I'm doing that for 2 separate builds here. So that's my preferred method, but you can do each contest individually. And then next question was, what is the criteria for late swap? Is it only when a player is actually out? Good question. So if a player is ruled out, what I would do is come into the app. I would always quick swap first. So quick swap the player, get that player out of your entries, get players with projected points into your entries, upload that to SaberSim, re-download your template file, and then run a late swap, run a fresh late swap from there. At least you know that that player is out in your actual lineups. A player who is projected to play is in, and in case anything goes wrong with late swap. So at least that's taken care of. And then what I would do here is really, if you're using contest sims, I would late swap at each window just to take advantage of the live sims, understanding how the players have played up to that point in the game and understanding how that can affect the score needed to win your individual contest. So I would do that if you're on contest sims. If you are not on contest sims, what I would do is go into the Discord and go into the NBA lineup alerts channel and then see when simulations run. If within an hour to lock and then through lock, when a simulation completes, we are going to summarize any changes to projections. So that you will either see 2 messages. One will say no significant projection changes. This means that no player moved more or less than 2 points. If any player or group of player does move more than 2 points, you're going to see that information summarized. So let's say that, late swap comes and then Lauri Markkanen, who's questionable, gets ruled out. Well, you're going to see, hey, minus 37 points for Markkanen. You're probably going to see Jordan Clarkson come up. You're going to see Keontae George come up. You're going to see, maybe Colin Sexton moves into the lineup or something like that. You're going to see all these projection adjustments summarized underneath that individual sim. So that is what will happen if a player is ruled out. And then you can easily know, hey, I should late swap to take advantage of this news. So I would always keep that up. And then next question was, let's say I run a build where I look at exposure versus pool and the discrepancy behind from one extreme to the other, like 75% exposure to 9% pool. Basically kind of how to handle that. Yeah, I think that's an interesting situation. That is kind of a red flag situation for me where I see a player in a bunch of my top lineups, but I don't see them in a ton of the pool, right? And I think that that's a situation where I personally like to manage my risk. And even in, with all the updates, diversification is still important. I would still be using min uniques. Like an example here is Miles Turner, 12% ownership, 30% of my pool. So we like him overall, but I'm getting, him in almost all of my lineups. This is an opportunity to take advantage of min uniques here and then let SaberSim do some of the lineup curation for you. Now he goes from 95% to 50% at min uniques of 5. And then I am still, at lineup 1399 and a positive sim ROI. So I would be comfortable with these, with this min unique setting of 5 here, and the exposures that I'm getting, my leverages are a little bit lower, still positive leverage, but not as much as before. So I still think diversification is important here. And I do think that, looking for those type of situations where you have a small amount of a player in your pool, but a large amount of a player in your actual exposures could be an opportunity for you to do some risk management in that situation. So I really do like the fact that you're paying attention to those signals that are in the app that you can see here. All right. Ghost said, how should we handle late news when SaberSim sims aren't fast enough to adjust to late scratches? Great question. What I would do is just handle that in the app. So like, let's say that, we'll go back to Mark Cannon, right? So let's say that, you're in a spot and Mark Cannon gets ruled out, 2 minutes to lock or something crazy. I saw some weird stuff happen this weekend with Jordan Poole. Let's say like, for some reason you found out like a minute before lock that Jordan Poole gets ruled out. If you come into the app and you turn somebody's projection to 0 and they're in your lineups, what is going to happen is the red lightning bolt is automatically going to turn on. So what the red lightning bolt does, it looks at the lineups in your CSV, it looks at the players in your CSV, and if any of them get turned to a 0-point projection, then it is going to activate and consider that player out. So if you come in here, you put the person's projection down to 0, red lightning bolt goes off, quick swap them, get that lineup file into the fantasy site, and just be happy that you got a player with projection back into your lineups. And then after that lock window, you can re-download your template file, then come in and then optimize based on now having that news once those sims have completed. We try and update as fast as possible, but there's definitely news that comes out so late that even we can't keep up with it. Good news is, one thing to note is that, the same time constraints that you are under, everybody in your contest is under. So it's not just you who is, at a disadvantage. Everybody's trying to react as fast as possible in those situations. All right. Jay Stanger said, I'm wondering if with the live sims, there is a good way to separate underperforming versus overperforming lineups. I haven't done it much before, but I like to have a good way to late swap lineups such that underperforming ones will then now try to better min cash, and the overperforming ones will try to finish as high as possible. So this happens naturally. And the reason for that is because ROI is being used. So for the lineups that are doing poorly, their best path to a higher ROI is through min cash equity. And then the lineups that are doing good, their best path to a higher ROI is through win rate. So SaberSim will understand at what probability these lineups have of winning. And then if you're using ROI as your sorting metric, it's going to put the lineups in the top that had the better ROI. So whether that lineup was doing poorly and it needed mid cash equity, whether that lineup was doing great and has high win rate equity, ROI is going to capture both of those scenarios for those individual lineups based on their individual performance. All right. Last question in the Discord here, and then we're going to jump over to the YouTube chat here. Question says, more of a process question, NBA, am I negatively impacting my outcomes by removing 15 to 20 players from my player pool? Should I set a rule to limit lower projected players or remove those players outright? Good question. I think it's totally okay to curate your player pool. This is something that I personally do myself here. I like to do that. And I have talked to smart people such as, other like SaberSim community members and other top pros about curating your lineup pool. And I think that this is something that Max Steinberg has talked about openly on like some NBA videos from last season, is about, using filters to curate players based on projection or value or different things like that. So I'm all for curating your player pool. I think it's totally okay to remove players. All right. Next question here, jumping over to the YouTube chat. The Goon said, how can you get rid of bad value in NBA DFS? Yeah, with a player filter is going to be your easiest option here. So if I go to a new build here and I click this filter icon next to the search bar, I go to add filter and I can say, show players with value greater than 4, right? And then basically I would be getting rid of like quote unquote bad value players. If I scroll down here, I can see all the players that I'm getting rid of, right? These guys don't have a great point per dollar value here, and I'm removing them, right? So that's one way to do it. Sal said, please explain how SaberSim gave me 100% of running back Darrell Henderson in the afternoon slate when he had been cut days before. Yeah, so there was a situation this week. I don't know if you guys missed it or not. The Rams released the wrong injury report. They had an injury report come out where Kyron Williams was inactive and Tyler Higbee was inactive. And then after that report came out, they re-released the correct injury report with those players active. So there was a lot of, I would say, like weird data stuff that went on once those incorrect inactive reports came out. We were fixing it and communicating as quickly as possible in the Discord leading up to lock. So I believe about like 3:40 Eastern, everything was like good to go, fixed after that second report came out. But prior to that, if you had built between that 3:40 window and the original injury report coming out, you could have gotten lineups with Darrell Henderson in them. So we do apologize. It was a very weird thing with the actual, Rams releasing the wrong injury report. And we tried to fix it as quickly as possible and communicate it as effectively as possible within the Discord. So the support channel in Discord is always a good place to be. And we try to update as quickly as possible there. But apologies about that. Shane said, do you have any recommended or preferred settings when sorting lineups such as ROI, risk-adjusted ROI, win rate, etc.? New to trying out the ultimate and just trying to gauge what others like to use. Thanks. Yeah, great question here. So if I go back to this build here, so one thing that you're going to see here when you go to your contest sim metrics is you're going to see ROI, RAROI, win rate, cash rate, ROI standard deviation, and dupes. So from these 6 contest sim metrics, risk-adjusted ROI is the only one that doesn't come directly from the contest sim. So when we run the contest sim 100,000 times, all of these other values are generated from there. What risk-adjusted ROI does, it looks at the other 5 and then determines, it gives the lineup a score based on this summary from the other 5 metrics, and then it uses that as the preferred sorting metric. So when we originally released contest sims, risk-adjusted ROI was not part of it because it was not being derived directly from the contest sim. But we realized that the ROI lineups were very high leveraged. So we wanted to provide something that looked at the risk of the lineup and the distribution of the payout and the ROI that was returned and balanced all of those things out. And that is what risk-adjusted ROI is. So we suggest using that as the preferred sorting metric. All right. Kent said, is there any way to set minimax exposures for a wide receiver specific to his pairing with a quarterback stack? So know his min or max in the overall set of 150, let's just say, but his minimax with a specific QB. Good question. There is not a way to do this. So what you're talking about is like player specific combination minimax exposures. This is a good feature request that I'm happy to take back to the team here. So what I'm going to say is min-max combo exposures, and I will get that logged. Benihana said, hey, Andrew, I have a request. Every time I try to upload my lineups for FanDuel, it doesn't recognize the IDs. Can someone please edit to allow FanDuel lineup pool with this format, IDs, names? Is it possible? I agree with this question about ownership and projection accuracy. Okay, we did talk about that. Benihana, I'm not 100% sure what's going on. I do remember seeing your report. Do me a favor, send us another one. Send us an email, support@sabersim.com, and we'll figure out what's going on. But honestly, I feel like it might not be that specifically, because if it was, we would have like widespread people reaching out to us about this problem. So I don't know exactly what's going on, but we're happy to look into it and help you to figure it out. So send us another email and we can go back and forth on it. But seems like a very weird edge case probably happening. All right. Noah said, hey, Andrew, can you make NHL lines unstacked? It has to be more unique than having line stacks. No. No, I appreciate the, out of the box thinking here, but I would really recommend not trying to get weird with NHL stacking. Sometimes different is not always better. Like there are general heuristics for sports for a reason because they're generally good here. And the reason for that is when you come into an NHL slate and you click on any individual player, you're going to see very high correlation values between the same players that skate on the same line. So 0.36, 0.27, 0.25, 0.25. These are very high correlation coefficients, and you do want to capture those. You do not want to create this unstacked lineup, and you want to increase the chances of winning, where if one player does good, probably other players on his team are also doing good because they're getting assists, because they're getting more shots on goal. They're getting different things like that, all these team scoring benefits here. So I would still continue to stack in NHL, and I would highly recommend against building unstacked lineups. All right. Demetrius said, are there any new lineup rules for NHL, NFL, and NBA that you have not shown us in a video? Good question. I would say no. We are not a rule-heavy optimizer. We think that we have a smart optimizer where sim diversity, our play-by-play sims, and our correlation slider really capture a lot of that for you. What I really recommend is learning to use SaberSim, building lineups, and then recognizing, hey, is there a particular thing that SaberSim is not doing that I want it to do that can be solved with a rule? Or is there something that SaberSim continues to do that I don't want it to do that can be stopped with a rule? Those are really the only two times that I am ever using rules, and I'm using them on like very specific occasions where I want to see something very specific. So like, for instance, I used one for like Thanksgiving where it's like, hey, I don't want to play a quarterback against his opposing defense. We have like the default rule where it says don't play any player against their defense, but that rule shouldn't apply for like a 3-game slate. But I did think the quarterback defense one was one I particularly wanted to focus on. So that was one rule that I used in a very specific situation, but that's kind of how I'm approaching rules in general. Okay. Looks like I already answered Kent's question. Yes, I did here. And then next question here from Franklin said, when late swapping, after you run the contest sim, should you run it for each contest for 20 max and 150 max, or will it recognize that you played those contests and just sim for those settings? Good question. So as long as let's say that, you have multiple contest sims in your contest sim settings, you do not need to run them one by one. You can run them all simultaneously here. So what I would do is just make sure to go to your contest sim settings. Let's say that you have multiple contest sims, right? Just come in here, make sure that they're both checked. And then as long as they're all checked or both checked or however many you have, we're going to run them all simultaneously, and then they will be available within this lineup sorting drop down here. So I would just, go through here. You could sort by the different ones and then fill them accordingly. All right. And then looks like we had a follow-up in the Discord from Jay Stanger. Question says, gotcha. So pre-lock, we can sort by RAROI, and then late swap, we can sort by ROI. I was thinking there was more work, but that makes sense and definitely simplifies the process. Yeah, I've talked about this a little bit here. I think that, switching to ROI post lock is something interesting here. Really, because the idea with late swap is you're trying to take advantage of late breaking news, and you want to get to some of the value that opens up, especially for like NBA. Like there's definitely a case to still use risk adjusted ROI, but like I'm generally an aggressive player, which is like why I lean that way. But if that's not you, if you're closer to like Jordan and a little more risk averse, I think continuing to use risk adjusted ROI is totally okay. So there's not a wrong or right answer. It really just depends on what kind of player you are. I think that sorting by both and then seeing which lineups pass the eye test for you is a totally good option that I would continue to use. But that about does it, everybody. We're all caught up with questions in support, Discord, and the YouTube chat. So appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we will be right back here tomorrow, Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. We will see you all. Thanks. Bye.